a second, I'd like to point out that we have extra seats upstairs and they're quite good visually, so you can see everything. So if you're interested in having a seat rather than standing, you can simply go upstairs and have a seat and have a view of the proceedings that's pretty good for those that are interested in staying here for a while. That's a pretty good seat up there. Also, we have some rules of this committee. I'd like to let people know what the rules are of this committee. This is the Senate Transportation and Housing Committee, in case you're not in the right room. I'm the chairman, Jim Bell, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. First of all, I'd like everybody that has a cell phone on to turn it off. Conversations, do not have conversations in the room. We have way too many people to listen to the proceedings over your conversations. So if you would like to make comments or have conversations with people, leave the room. So that would really help us have the proceedings keep on track. We'd like to ask that there are some people that are taking flash photography. We do not allow flash photography in this room. Please do not use flash photography. It interferes with the cameras. There are people, this is broadcast throughout the state of California, and your flash photography interferes with people in California watching our proceedings. And we also have a rule of no holding up signs. Do not hold up your signs, please. Appreciate it very much. We have a pretty strong agenda. The following bills have been pulled from today's agenda at the request of the offer, and that's Senator Liu's item 7, SB 580. It's been pulled. Senator Cornell, I understand the Vice Chair has pulled SB 632. Is that correct, Senator? Okay, item 9 has been pulled. We will not hear those items today. We have 11 measures on the agenda and 1 item on consent. The consent item is item 13. And we do not have a quorum at this time. We will begin as a subcommittee until we establish a quorum. So we will take up the first item at this point, and then if we do get a quorum, Senator Leno, we will call quorum. And so we'll begin with SB 364, Senator Leno's bill. Senator Leno, you have the floor. And welcome. We will have a quorum shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, and we very much appreciate this special order. We will be as succinct as possible. Let me start by saying that I agree to accept the amendments suggested in the analysis, clarifying that the natural person exemption may cover more than one person and also covers living trusts. And also agree to an amendment clarifying the transfer of the property into a living trust would not be considered a change in owner of record and would not restart the 5-year ownership clock. And I think we also recognize, with regard to consideration of whether to add an amendment concerning the inheritance of a property, restarting the clock will be left to the next policy committee, which is a judiciary committee, which is the proper place to talk about inheritance. But my intent is also to clarify that that would not restart the clock, that that's not our intent here. So I'm just going to start at the very beginning. Clearly, this is a district bill. Let me repeat that, a district bill. It will impact only the constituents of my district, none of yours, nobody else in the state. And the reason I have introduced this bill, and my mayor of San Francisco Edwin Lee is by my side today. He is the sponsor of the bill because of a crisis in our city, a really serious crisis in our city. And I know that opposition is saying, well, it's San Francisco's fault. We haven't been building enough housing in recent years. The mayor will tell you how many tens of thousands of units we are currently building, and about a third of them, unlike any place else in the state, will be below market rate. We're building tower after tower. We've got 30 cranes in the air. It's like no place else in the state of California right now. And also, because Silicon Valley's creating so many jobs and not building sufficient housing, we also feel the impact of their lack of housing. Their workers will not live in San Francisco as well. So starting at the beginning, what is the Ellis Act? The Ellis Act was a response by the California legislature to a 1984 California Supreme Court decision that ruled that there was no statutory right for a landlord to kick out all of his or her tenants for the purpose of going out of the business of being a landlord. The court ruled that you, landlord, not unlike any other business owner, can sell your property, but you can't evict everyone to go out of the business. The legislature responded and created that statutory right. So a landlord wishing to get out of the business of being a landlord can evict all tenants. We are not here today in any way to do away with the Ellis Act. Let me just clarify, because I hear a lot of other things from those who think they are opposed to this bill. It's not an attempt to repeal the Ellis Act. We're creating an authorization for San Francisco by a vote of the Board of Supervisors, those who are most accountable for those in San Francisco, accountable to the voters of San Francisco, with the mayor's signature, to be able to require 5 years ownership before the Ellis Act can be used. And why are we doing this? To differentiate between landlords for whom the statute was created and those who are exploiting, abusing this law. People who are not landlords, don't intend to or pretend to be landlords, they're speculators. And I just want to read, if I may, very briefly, from the committee analysis back in 1985 for SB 505 by legislator Ellis, Senator Ellis. And what I'm going to read you is from the California Association of Realtors, the source of the bill. And they stated the following arguments in support. Requiring a person to continue to offer his or her residential real property for rent approaches or compromises involuntary servitude. I'm not arguing with that. Offering real property for rent involves considerable personal liability, and the management of real property includes considerable psychological demands as evidenced by the pressures of tenant relations. Wouldn't argue with that. What I argue with, and why we need this bill, is there are those who are purchasing property with the intent of evicting all people, not to become landlords. The business plan is to evict everybody, and local law allows them to then sell off pieces of the building as what's known as tenancies in common or cooperatives in other parts of the country for significant profit. And guess what they do after they successfully stuff their pockets with those profits while buildings are empty and people are put out into the street? And keep in mind, because of the rental market in San Francisco, if you lose your rent-controlled apartment, like a Monopoly game, you are off the board. You are out. You will not find any place else you can afford to rent. Families are disrupted. Kids lose their schools. Seniors lose their medical and social support. It's very serious for the benefit of a very, very small group of exploiters of this law. And so that's what we're trying to prevent. And I would give you this definitional differentiation between a landlord and a speculator. A landlord's business model is 100% occupancy. That's what a landlord does. A speculator's business model is 100% vacancy. That's what they do. And whereas this law was created for real landlords to go out of the business, what we're seeing in San Francisco is serial Ellis actors. They buy a building, evict, make their profit. They buy another building, evict, make their profit 3 times, 4 times. These are not landlords going out of the business of being a landlord. I think anyone could see that. So we want to be very sensitive to real landlords and real small property owners. And last year we had lines of people who came from San Francisco, earnest, small property owners, urging committee members to vote against the bill. And in their comments they said, please don't kick me out of my home. I've lived there 30 years. I've worked hard. I don't know what the opposition was putting in their heads, but clearly not the truth. Because if you've owned your property 5 years or more, this won't touch you if you live in San Francisco. And if you suddenly inherited it, or it's some other exceptional situation, we're exempting you. And of course, irrespective of this bill, a property owner can always, without exception, sell the property. And in San Francisco right now, at a premium price. There's no one to suggest that you can't get a high market value if you really want to get out of the business. So I think you can understand that this is being abused by a small group of folks. What you may not know is that our most valuable affordable housing stock in San Francisco is our rent-controlled stock. One would never use the Ellis Act in any area that isn't rent-controlled, because if it's not rent-controlled and you want tenants out, all you have to do is raise your rents to beyond what your tenants can pay, and they're gone. So it's only in rent-controlled areas this comes into play. And so this is our most valuable affordable housing stock. We're all talking about how can we build more affordable housing in California. Well, building more affordable housing is imperative, but if we're losing our existing affordable housing at the same time, we're just treading water. We're not making any progress at all. And that's what's happening in San Francisco right now. One-bedroom apartments on average going for more than $3,500 a month. You've got to earn 6 figures just to afford a one-bedroom apartment. So it's a district bill, a district crisis. I really ask if you could just understand, we need your help to address this. And, you know, we all battle back and forth sometimes on issues of local control. Should the state come in and impose its will? Should we have, as the governor talks about, subsidiarity? And as he defines subsidiarity, it's let those closest to the decisions being made make the decisions. And I suspect none of us are consistent in when we support local control and when we don't. But certainly on an issue as critically important as a roof over one's head, in a crisis situation, in a unique geographic area, 7 miles by 7 miles, that's all we are, surrounded by water on 3 sides. Building new housing is not easy. 1,000 new units were just built in my little neighborhood over the past couple years. It's getting denser and denser, and I supported that greater density because we need more housing. And the mayor will tell you about what he's doing for it. So I'll quiet down. I thank you for your attention and giving serious consideration to this. I'll have some follow-up comments after the opposition makes their points. And again, I appreciate your consideration of what is the most important issue facing our city today. And I present Mayor Ed Lee.
Okay, thank you, Senator Leno. There's going to be a lot of interest on the bill on both sides, and we are going to limit testimony to 2 main speakers for each side. Other people may come forward under public comment and indicate your name, organization, and position on the bill. And Mayor, I have to leave and present a bill in Judiciary Committee, and I'll be right back. I'll be back. And I'll turn it over to the Vice Chair, or he just left too. Okay, so I'll turn it over to, Senator Bates, and she'll begin the hearing, but I'll be right back. I have to present a bill in Judiciary on foster care. Okay,
Good luck, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Begin, please.
Thank you, Senator Bates, and thank you, members of the committee, for allowing us to have a discussion with you today on Senate Bill 364. Since I arrived in San Francisco, I've fought for clean and safe and affordable housing for all of San Franciscans. If you know my background, I've been a tenant lawyer for many years to just try to protect our senior citizens for many years, and I've been glad to do that. Today we have a housing crisis. As Senator Leno explained, it's been decades in the making. Yet I will continue my efforts to make sure that we find solutions to this housing crisis in San Francisco. Today I'm here to ask you for your support for Senate Bill 364. The abuse that had been explained by Senator Leno is quite accurate. It contributes to our housing crisis, and we need this loophole in the legislation closed so that it cannot be abused in our city. To date, over 10,000 people have lost their homes due to Ellis Act evictions. And that data shows that people practicing this abuse are not long-term property owners. They are real estate speculators. They are in the business to flip that property and get out. And when they are doing so, they are focused on vulnerable tenants that are living in those rent-controlled units. These are our immigrants. These are our families, our seniors, our teachers, our disabled residents. Speculators buy the building only to invoke that Ellis Act and go out of the business and evict those tenants. And their business model is based upon their ability to act quickly, to evict and then to resell, and usually resulting in tenancies in common. This activity completely destabilizes very established neighborhoods. Part of our goal here is to make sure that we restabilize them and preserve the kind of diversity that we've always been known for in San Francisco. A strong Mission District, a strong Chinatown District, a vibrant Japantown District, a district that invites people with different languages and different cultures. I assure you, without closing this loophole, we will contribute to losing a very big part of our diversity, and to me, that is the strength of our city. This is not only entirely acceptable, but it will and must have to change if we're going to keep the diversity. And I know that it's the strength of many cities across the state, but in San Francisco, we're asking specifically for this help. I will say that the number of Ellis Act evictions has gone down this past year. We believe it was a result of some very well-publicized efforts on our part to try to get this law changed last year. And the data will show us now that in the month of February of this year, 40 applications to withdraw units under the Ellis Act were made. That's more than double the entire of last year, just in 1 month. We believe this will be an indication that these numbers will climb and the abuses and evictions will continue to occur unless you authorize us to make the changes locally. That's why I'm asking for your help to protect the most in need residents of our city. The bill before you is designed to disrupt the timing of the speculative purchases by reserving the Ellis Act only for long-term property owners. The bill will help us meet the challenges of our growing city and its economic base while keeping long-term residents in their homes. Well, let me pause here to make sure you know what my administration is doing to address the housing crisis locally. In January of last year, I set an ambitious agenda to build 30,000 new homes by 2020, a third of which will be guaranteed affordable to low and moderate income families. We are already on track to meet that goal. We produced over 4,300 new homes, with 1,300 of them permanently affordable to low and moderate income families. That's 31% permanently affordable to low and middle income families and residents. And even after the loss of the redevelopment agencies, we were able to do this because I asked the voters, and they in turn approved a 30-year, $1.3 billion housing trust fund to build affordable housing. The voters see housing as a priority by an overwhelmingly majority to pass that housing trust fund. We're building homes, and we are strengthening our communities. We've also embarked on a $1.4 billion public housing transformation that will provide improved living conditions for our public housing system and help provide better housing for the most vulnerable residents of our city. And in this November, I've already set out a task force to work with the community and to work with all the agencies to put before the voters an authorization of a $250 million housing bond to create more housing opportunities for low and moderate households. We are making progress steadily, but we need more time to complete it. We can and will do more to ensure that affordable housing is for our most vulnerable, and that's why it's so critical and necessary that we're able under state law to preserve precious existing housing stock and not lose them at a time we're trying to build more to accommodate the growing numbers in our diverse neighborhoods. We're also in need of stabilizing our neighborhoods at the same time. We have working families, we have veterans that are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, and we have seniors that are most nervous about this, and we have many more that are desperately in need of housing for themselves and their families. This bill is one of many ways, not the only way, but many ways that we can keep San Francisco economically and culturally diverse as possible. We do have unanimous support for this bill at our Board of Supervisors, unanimous. And we in San Francisco, we simply can't do it alone. We need your help. And I'm asking you here today to give your support for a San Francisco-only bill. We recognize it will grant our city the ability to address this egregiously bad behavior without harming long-term property owners. We need your support for this bill today, and I ask that you help us continue being a city that remains a city for the 100%. Thank you.